Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today, I am joined by my friends and colleagues to break down all of the major astrological transits for the month of January, and there are a lot of transits this month that we're going to be breaking down. My co-hosts will take sections of the month and give you their unique take on each of the sections as the month progresses. There's a lot to look forward to this month. Of course, we have horoscopes for the month ahead that explored some of the dynamics across all 12 signs. You can check those out as well on the channel. But before we get into it today, remember to like and subscribe, share your comments and reflections. If you're not yet subscribed yet, please take a second, click the subscribe button, hype us. All of that good stuff helps us grow so much. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on my website, of course, which is nightlightastrology.com. Again, a big thank you to everyone who made our Kickstarter campaign possible this year. Really can't thank you enough for the support to me, my staff, the channel. We're able to host people like this, give new budding astrologers opportunities to, develop their platforms and voices, to read. We host visiting speakers. We host free events. We host free meditation gatherings. This content's free 7 days a week. And it happens because people like you pitch in every year. So thank you. Thank you. On that note, if you still want to pick up a gift or make a late pledge, like we keep the Kickstarter open. They have this late pledge feature enabled. So if you click on the link to the Kickstarter at the top of the comment section or in the description of this video, you can head over there and still pick up any of the rewards. The talks that I did on the astrology of the year ahead, or the horoscopes for the entire year ahead are there, and lots of other good deals on all of our programs. We're going to keep that up for probably about 7 to 10 days for people who wanted to pick up one of our sale items. We'll just keep it open for a little bit. So head over there if you want to. And thanks again. All right. Now, on that note, I am really glad to bring back our panel today. Bianca, Tim, Shirzad, Courtney, welcome back, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We record these in advance, so I just want everyone to know how awkward it is for us to say Happy New Year.
Feels weird.
But if you're listening to this, we really do wish you a Happy New Year. On that note, we have so many transits to talk about this month. In horoscopes, we focused a lot on the triple cazimi between Venus, Mars, and the Sun in Capricorn, all forming in the opposition to Jupiter in Cancer. That's a major story this month, but there are other stories, a lot of them from start to finish, including toward the very end of the month. Neptune's back into Aries. That's a huge story for the outer planets this month as well. So we're going to break it all down for you. And because there are so many transits this month, rather than just sort of crashing into all of it, trying to put it all out in advance, which I think would be a mess. What I'm going to do is I am going to simply start. We're just going to dive right in is what we're going to do. So let me just pull up my notes here so that I've got them. I'm going to put the chart up on the screen, and Bianca is going to lead us off with the first section of transits, which take place between the 1st and 10th of January. And then as we go on, Tim's got the 11th through the 19th. Shirazad has the 19th to the 23rd, where there is a powerful congregation of aspects and a little short window she's going to be covering. And then Courtney's got the 24th to 31st, where we have some very powerful events, including Neptune into Aries at the very end of the month. So that's how we'll break things down. And we're going to start with Bianca. Bianca, I'm going to put your... I'm going to put the chart up on the screen. Here we go. All right, now I'm going to make sure that Bianca's up at the top. I'm going to pull myself down to the bottom so you don't have to look at my mug. And you just give me cues as to what transit you want me to flash up on the screen, because I've got banners for all of them as we go. Okay. And I will draw alongside of you whatever you're talking about, okay?
Great. Okay, awesome. That sounds good. I do have it kind of in sequence, so it should be pretty clear. I won't be chopping and changing too much. Just try and keep it in one flow. But so I thought I figured there'd be a bit of talk leading up to these transits in the early part of January. So I tried to make this unique in and just my own spin on it. And what I wanted to do was start off with a story. It's just a really quick short story because I'd like to just tie in the transits, and I felt like the story kind of touches on a few key transits for this first week of January. So it's called The Skeleton Woman, and it's out of the book Woman Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And I know it's quite a popular book, so hopefully listeners know what story I'm talking about. And I think this will help bring out some of the themes of the transits, like I said, and we'll be seeing in the first 10 days of January. It's a hunting story about love set in the frozen north, so it's got the Saturnian feel to it. So long ago, a woman was cast from a cliff by her father for a crime no one remembers. The sea stripped her bone. Currents rolled her skeleton endlessly along the ocean floor. One day, a fisherman drifted into a bay that others had avoided. His hook caught fast in her ribs. Believing he had landed a great fish, he pulled, dragged the dead upwards. She struggled, and the more she fought, the tighter the line clenched through her bones. When she broke the surface, he saw her skull hanging from the kayak. He fled in terror, but she was still hooked. As he ran, she followed, bumping, clattering, dragged across the rock and ice, never falling behind. He hid in his snow house and lit his lamp. There she laid inside, tangled and silent. Fear broke him. He untied her with shaking hands. That night, as he slept, a tear fell. She drank it. Then, while laying beside him, she reached inside the sleeping man and took out his heart. The mighty drum, she banged on both sides of it like a drum and began to sing flesh onto her bones. The more she sang, the more her body filled out with flesh. She sang for her hair and good eyes and nice fat hands. She sang the divide between her legs and breasts long enough to wrap for warmth and all the things a woman needs. When she was done, she crept into bed with him. Skin against skin, she returned the great drum, his beating heart to his body, and that is how they awakened, wrapped one around the other, tangled from their night together in another way now, a good and lasting way. And so I like that with the first transit that we have on the January the 1st, Mercury square Neptune, this Mercury square Neptune opens the story exactly where the skeleton woman begins, with a mistaken perception that the fisherman believes he's caught a great fish, and Mercury thinks it understands. Neptune obscures what actually is present. So this transit exposes the fantasies we speak from and the illusions we listen to. So words blur, and we may feel inspired or confused or disillusioned or quietly deceived by our own hopes. And this is the moment when Skeleton Woman is accidentally hooked. And with this story, as I go through it, it's more about the death life cycle of relationships, but I think it's very relatable to what's going to be happening early in January. And so if we fast forward to the 3rd of January, we've got this beautiful Cancer full moon, and the Cancer full moon brings the body and heart into this story. The moon's themes of nourishment and emotional warmth and security becomes readily available and perceptible, and often corresponding with a felt sense of ease and containment within ourselves and in relation with others. So Cancer does not want death, it wants continuity and warmth. So where the Great Mother archetype emphasizes warmth and repetition and care, the moon's role as a significator of life sustaining processes. So there's that Saturnian symbolism, because after all, it's a full moon. There's a Saturnian symbolism that emphasizes coldness and endurance, mastery through effort, and so both are necessary. And here is a phenomena that occurs constantly over and over again, we have two people beginning a dance to see if they would care to love one another. And that is when the skeleton woman is accidentally hooked. But we all do this. We all dance with one another to see, like, how does this person fit in my life, or is this person not someone that I see long term with, and not realizing that regardless of who it is, there's going to be something that's going to be unearthed. We don't yet know what that is until we live that experience. And so the Venus Cazimi on the 6th of January, it's like that part of the story where the fisherman's untangling the bones. So Venus is in the heart of the sun, and in this moment, it's a moment of consecration, truth. In Capricorn, this is not like a romantic sweetness. Venus is the sober devotion. And this is the moment in that myth where fear softens into presence. The fisherman doesn't flee anymore. He sits and he untangles the line, and he tends to this to skeleton woman carefully and patiently and respectfully. And Clarissa reminds us that what is required in this life cycle is a heart willing to die and be born again and again. And a part of every one of us, we tend to resist this knowing that in all love relationships, death must have her share of the experience. And sometimes we pretend we can love without our illusions about love dying, or pretend we can go on without our superficial expectations dying. But Capricorn, Venus Cazimi, or Venus Cazimi in Capricorn, as she's transitioning into her evening star phase, this yin phase. So she learns devotion and responsibility and endurance. And love here is no longer fantasy. It is a sober, grounded consciousness. And so here we ask ourselves, can I love what is real rather than what I hope it would become? And what does love look like when it is stripped of performance, promise, or perfection? And then the Venus and Mars conjunction, the two lovers coming together in the sky, on January the 7th, desire awakens, and there's but it's like this desire after the disillusionment, and passion after fear. So skeleton woman drinks the fisherman's tear, and in myth, tears carry immense creative power. They are agents of reunion and transformation, binding souls, uniting disparate elements. So in herbal folklore, tears are used as a binder to secure, to join in, and to seal. So, and poured upon the body, they restore sight or lacerations and bring wholeness. So as she drinks, skeleton woman sings flesh back into her bones, and life returns. This is life, death, life in action. So fantasy dies, fear is faced, and love is reborn in embodied truth. The fisherman's tear, his openness, vulnerability, and presence becomes that catalyst for creation, for healing, and for love's renewal. And this is where we ask ourselves, how has vulnerability created connection or reunion for me in the past? And where might softness be more generative than force right now? So, and then we've got this Mars Cazimi on the 9th of January, as well as Venus opposition to Jupiter. But in all honesty, it's like they're all coming up to a perfect opposition to Jupiter. Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury's trailing a little bit behind. So Mars Cazimi empowers us to step fully into relationships and also creative action. personal integrity, even after disillusionment or fear. And it's that flame that burns away hesitation and completes the initiation that began possibly with the Mercury square Neptune. But so by January the 9th, we've got courage, desire, and devotion riding together in Capricorn, fully aligned in purpose. But that exalted Jupiter in Cancer looms in opposition, reminding us that power without care, that desire must meet devotion, and that true love asks not only that we face fear, but that we hold the other with integrity. And when I think of Jupiter's influence, in this Cancer Capricorn axis, when Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, we often see themes of a Jupiterian, lunar, and Cancerian quality. So trying to infuse all of that into one, we get periods of emotional restoration, growth through family, home and land, reconnection with faith after loss or disillusionment, wisdom gained through lived experience. And so, and if we think about the planets that are currently in Capricorn opposing Jupiter, we think Venus in Capricorn brings this tenderness, and Mercury brings clarity. Mars exalted brings this fire of will drive, and it's like this courage that carries desire, devotion, integrity, and it funnels it through that Jupiterian lens to create proliferation of life, growth, prosperity, abundance, all the good things. And why does this matter now? Symbolically, this axis speaks to like a collective yearning or hunger for love that feels nourishing to the soul. That's that Jupiter in Cancer, and the effort and devotion and understanding and drive to build on a foundation that doesn't collapse. That's that Mars, Venus, Sun in Capricorn. And that's pretty much all that I have for the first part of January.
Sorry, guys. There we go. That was fantastic. It's a tremendous feat to marry so many transits together and using a story with such a wise and like intelligent way of doing it. I loved that story. So I'm sure everyone else benefited too. And I was trying to fix my pen because my pen is not, there we go. Now it's working. I had to shut the program down and restart it. So I apologize because I was trying to get it to work so that I could highlight transits as you were talking. But I think regardless, the story came across really nicely. And I would also tell people this particular part of the month of January was our focus for horoscopes this month. So if you want horoscopic breakdown of those Cazimis, conjunctions, opposition with Jupiter, the contrast between Cancer and Capricorn that you just laid out was so lovely. And so I think between your explanation and horoscopes for the month, people have on the channel are going to get a really nice way of looking at things here. Well, thank you. Let's move into part 2, which is like another very like meaty, substantive part of our month. Tim is going to be taking us through it. Tim, you just tell me as we go what you want me to highlight in order, and I will do it. I've got them all. I've got banners galore, and I can now draw too. So you go for it.
All right, absolutely. Mine will be similar to Bianca in that same fashion. Bianca, I really appreciate the Cancer Capricorn delineation. That's all my chart. So like that was beautifully well said.
Me too. Top
Right?
in the Cancer Capricorn axis. So it feels very personal right now.
Same. And so my whole theme of this next section is actually like the initiation into the Grand Aquarian plan. Like that's kind of what all these planets in Capricorn are going to do. So I've got 4 major themes that we should track throughout the week. One of those themes. So the first theme is like a practical reality versus emotional security. The second being what is actually worth investing in, what's actually worth putting money, contracts, institutions, like what's left here to invest in. The third thing is we're going to go through this series of like a shock, then kind of a clarification, and then what strategic actions can we put together that will then lead us into the fourth, the end of like this whole Capricorn phase, starting this big Aquarian new plan, new structure, because as soon as planets start going in Aquarius, they're like in an engagement with Pluto. So it's not just small pennies here. So the first kind of thread we definitely want to jump into is that practical reality versus that emotional security. This first transit is on January 14th. What this is Mercury in Capricorn opposing Jupiter in Cancer retrograde. I natally have this exact placement, so completely understand this. Mercury in Capricorn is beyond practical. He's Saturn ruled. He's incredibly good at spotting flaws, inefficiencies, structural weakness. It's the person that you want to, like, if you have a crisis, call this person, because they'll be able to like see everything and meticulously figure out what do we actually want to do. Now, Jupiter retrograde in Cancer. Jupiter, we've talked about Jupiter extensively in Cancer, expansion through emotional security, home, belonging, but also this concept we've been talking about, like gestation. And I think Adam brought up a really good point last month on the video about the square between Sagittarius and Cancer and how those different feelings of expansion, and Sagittarius being more that external expansion, wanting to get it. And I think about Cancer being like when a woman is pregnant, and how that expansion grows from within. It stays contained within, and it's a personal, it's a really attached growth that's emotional, that you have to have this kind of direction. So kind of the tension that we're going to be experiencing in this fact of practical reality is more so what I get is, does what I believe actually match how the world is operating? Like, I may have all of these beliefs, I may be reassessing some of these beliefs, but do the material facts match my emotional belief? And what is my actual belief versus really what's happening? Is it what I believe, or is it just what I want to believe? And do things line up to that? And I think beginning those questions, asking those kind of questions and feeling that tension leads us to the second thread, which is what's actually worth saving and investing in. And so this takes us to January 15th and January 17th. Now, what's going to happen is Venus is going to make a series of sextiles and trines. She's going to start by sextiling Saturn, then she's going to trine Uranus, then she's going to sextile Neptune before finally entering Aquarius. All of the planets in Capricorn are going to do this same kind of sequence. They're going to all start with that sextile to Saturn, then hit Uranus, then sextile Neptune, and enter Aquarius. So I'm going to talk about Venus in depth specifically, so we can kind of get the flavor of why it's this kind of stress test on institutions, figuring out, shining that light, like what we want to do. It doesn't have to just be institutions. I shouldn't say that, but that's just kind of, I get that feeling very strongly with Venus being in Capricorn and with Saturn being in the last couple degrees of Pisces. So we'll start on the 15th when Venus is actually sextiling Saturn. Venus, we love to see her in Capricorn. I like her because she's dignified, earth sign. I've got a Capi stellium, so it's just smooth kind of focus on long-term values, relationships. And she really wants fairness out of things, which is really nice. Stability and really like these tangible results. I love this configuration because there's mutual reception between Venus and Saturn. So Saturn is in her exaltation and she's in Saturn sign. So this is giving like, Venus is like, how can I stabilize some of what's going on, right? Like Saturn's, he's direct now. And this is like what we have left. Can I inject finances? Sure. But can it be love? Can it be care? Can it be value into a weakened system, whether that's an emotional system, physical system? But how can Venus help to stabilize what's going on? And so I feel like shortly after that, she's going to hit Uranus. All of the planets will then get Uranus, which is a nice little shock or a change or an enlightenment or learning something. Uranus at this time is going to be in Taurus, which is Venus's domicile. So maybe that shock in a Taurian place could be a new framework or a sudden restructuring that actually maybe helps Saturn. Or it could be shaking the system that we thought it's so stagnant and old, and it kind of gives it a new life to grow. Or maybe we realize that there's a new innovation in some area that can actually help some of these old systems. So the very interesting thing about that is once Venus gets a little bit jolted, all of these planets are going to have this little kind of gasp of breath, and then they'll sextile Neptune, which Neptune finally direct and is at the anaretic degree, is so close there may be moments of this like clarity, because as Neptune wants to go into Aries, that's a whole nother story. We're starting a whole nother cycle. So whatever's left from this cycle, we've got to get clarity and compassion about it. So, or excuse me, clarity and movement about it. And with Venus creating that sextile, I think we're going to see more of like a compassion without like this self-deception, more like an open arms way of maybe seeing what we thought was real versus what actually is real. And that goes back again to like that Mercury and Capricorn, like just like these are the cold hard facts. And so Venus will finish that up by entering in Aquarius, which shifts her from like, hey, this grounded, like these are the facts. I'm injecting, I'm giving love, I'm giving value, I'm trying to add things to stabilize. Into this Aquarian, she goes from building to now like planning, and she wants to architect. So her value becomes more ideological, and she immediately gets in an engagement with Pluto. So it's huge. So this whole sequence from hitting Saturn to Uranus to Neptune to entering Aquarius is this Saturn, what's going on? What's going to kind of work? Again, let's shake it up. Let's see the clarity of it. Let's put it all together. And then let's actually start building things in Aquarius. So as we continue, the sun's going to go in the same pattern, right? So on the 17th, the sun will actually sextile Saturn. And the difference between the sun and Venus is the sun is just literally going to shine a light on what's already there. So what works, what doesn't. It's literally just putting in like reality checks about what has. So maybe Venus's previous injection or stimulation, maybe some of it's worked, maybe some of it didn't. Maybe the sun is shining accountability on it. And with the sun being in Aquarius, or I'm sorry, with the sun being in Capricorn, I can imagine there'll be some accountability that goes with that. It's heavy. It's not just like, bam, hysteria. It's very calculated. Oh, I see that. Sun is also going to be trining Uranus. So that's also, again, that revelation, right? Like, oh, I see that. We have to do something about that. With that trine Uranus, maybe we need a new innovation. Maybe none of this can work anymore, right? Again, Capricorn is like the last earth sign where we get all of these consequences and like we have to deal with them. It's the last time before we're starting this new cycle. And so the sun, again, is seeking innovation and maybe what's threatening and what's there and what's really not there. And so that leads us into the third thread, which is this initial shock, a little bit of clarification, and then we can take strategic action. These are all signified. It starts with that new moon in Capricorn, but also Mercury conjunct Mars and Mercury sextile Saturn, all on the 18th of January. So all of these are just like going bam, bam, bam. And it's honestly really incredible. I'm super excited about this new moon in Capricorn because, again, it is this final Earth reset. We've been telling this story, and it's really trying to pull all of the consequences and compounding them over a long period of time and setting the terms of the next cycle. And again, it's being ruled by that Saturn in Pisces that's moving direct out of Pisces. And whatever's left, what can we keep? It's like, to me, it's almost really addressing and stressing the old guard to see what's left and how do we move forward. And this new moon is going to be imprinted with that Mercury-Mars conjunction in Capricorn. Love it. I love Mars in his exaltation. It is so good for me because it's so strategic. It's like you want to go fast, but Capricorn gives Mars these structures. Saturn provides this structure that which Mars then can, it's like giving Mars the exact maze and roadmap that he can say, okay, I can go full force because I know the bounds and I know within what to expend. And with Mercury being here, as we talked about, tactical, strategic, can easily see the flaws in things. Together, this combination is like a very strategic speech or words that carry like weight. They could be very poignant and powerful, like aggressive words, but they carry weight and in a way that can change things, like physically change things. So I think of like maybe legislation or ways in which people can exert aggression, but in a very calculated, but very tactical and strategic way to get the end result. So this new moon is starting a cycle with all of that kind of built in. And it also has Mercury sextile Saturn, which is like thoughtful planning, again, intellectual legitimacy, like Does this actual make sense? Is this practical? It has nothing to do with reactions or like with emotions. So it's super to the T. It takes out a lot of the kind of emotional aspects, and we can just physically or just literally say from like a policy standpoint, structurally, does it make sense? Yes or no. So Mercury in Capricorn is very black or white, yes or no. And so once we kind of get to this, we finally get to the last kind of thread, which is the end of the old story. Mercury has been assessing what's going on, the structural flaws in Saturn. So the next thing he's going to do is he's going to trine Uranus after that on January 19th. But also the sun is going to sextile Neptune and the sun will enter Aquarius. But that Mercury trine after assessing Saturn, that Mercury trine to Uranus is going to it's going to come up with probably some sort of like breakthrough idea. With that Uranus still being ruled by Venus, who's now in Aquarius, it may have something to do with that forward thinking plan or idea or where we're going next. So it could be a technological or financial shift that maybe is connected to maybe that first Saturn Venus sextile. But really, I believe it's going to have something to do with Mercury thinking more forward, like a new framework or how we readdress the resources and systems. So Mercury is already speeding along with that trine. And then we get the sun to sextile Neptune, which I call this the positive like hangover moment. This is kind of the moment in my mind where someone who like an alcoholic or someone who has difficulty drinking comes to like this revelation, these illusions of panic and all of this are kind of calmed. There's like a collective clarity and there's not really gaslighting. And it's a moment of now what? Do we do something different or do I stay here? It's like, here are all the consequences. I can see what's left. It's very clear in front of me. And then the sun enters in Aquarius that goes from what worked or what hasn't worked into, so what am I doing next? What's the next step? What's that next plan look like? But it has to come through this hyper reality of Neptune at like the last degree of the zodiac, right? Like getting ready to start a new cycle. And so the sun puts this heightened emphasis on what do we do next? Again, back in an engagement with Pluto, so everything is super magnified. Very excited to see how this all plays out. And yeah, I'm super looking forward to it.
That was, again, like all of you should get gold medals in the, you know, the gymnastics routine of astrology for the month of January. I mean, to be able to so nicely break down a series like that. I mean, every single planet in Capricorn going through this sextile to Saturn, trine to Uranus, sextile to Neptune, all with different ways of contributing, and then all moving into Aquarius. I really liked how you mapped that out, and the idea of a sort of structural examination and recalibration of frameworks, paradigms, ideologies, but very like practical and earthy. Like a lot of those things really resonated with me as you were breaking them down, Tim. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, it was great. It was fun.
Let's move into the next part of the month, which is another little condensed period that Shirzad is going to take us through. I'm going to move you up to the top so that, okay, there we go. And let me just, so you tell me where you want to go. Shirzad's going to take us the 19th through the 23rd. There's another sequence of events that we're going to look at here. And you just tell me what to put up on the screen and I'll draw.
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about 4 days and 10 transits. I'm not going to break them down individually, but I'm just going to name them because I have just put all of them together into themes. So on January 19th, I'm going to be talking about Venus conjunct Pluto. And then on January 20th, we have Saturn sextile Uranus, Mars trine Uranus, Mars sextile Saturn, Mercury sextile Neptune, and Mercury enters Aquarius. And then on 21st, we have a Mercury cazimi. On 22nd, we have Mercury conjunct Pluto. And then on 23rd, we have Mars entering Aquarius. So it's all Aquarian things here. And I have a stellium in Aquarius. So these are all very tangible things for me and all my Aquarians out there. Pluto in Aquarius, I feel all of you. So these are all themes that we have been experiencing. So from January 19th to January 23rd, we step into the Aquarian world, let's say. The Aquarius season is beginning here, and we can start to feel Pluto. This feels like a multidimensional Plutonian initiation as these personal planets, one by one, knock on a door and enter Aquarius and immediately meet Pluto at the gate and have to say hi and have to go through Pluto's gate. And it's not subtle because meeting Pluto at the gate is kind of like a irreversible compulsory reorientation. It's kind of a reset that affects how we relate, think, act, or even desire. Aquarius is Saturn's air temple, so we can think of it as the domain of the collective order, systematic structures, and logic. If Leo says I, Aquarius says we. And Aquarius looks ahead to the flawless future that could exist or can exist, and think of it as the systems and frameworks that outlives individual advantage. So when all these Aquarian planets meet Pluto, Pluto adds that transformational pressure, maybe hidden power dynamics that are exposed, maybe prior orientations that slowly die away and initiations that come with it. So for this period of time, there's kind of like that demand for change. And as we know, Aquarius is a fixed sign. Change is not easy for Aquarius. We Aquarians know what we're talking about. So that Saturnian authority combines with Aquarius abstraction here. So power is less about who someone is and more about whether they embody the principles that they claim to represent. So it's very important during this period of time. It's very important to notice the patterns, repeating patterns, the signals of where in our lives based on the Aquarius placement in our chart, whole sign house, where transformation is occurring and based on where it falls in your chart. And during this time, we can use support consciously. We can use routine, discipline, and intuition that can help us channel that Plutonian energy that is not necessarily easy. And it's very important to embrace that intuition and initiation during this period of time, during these 4 days, as all of these things are happening. It's kind of a threshold period, letting go of those outdated attachments while aligning with emerging structures that are bringing renewal. And it's not necessarily easy because of that fixed energy that Aquarius has. So a few things that we might watch for during this period of time, it might be shifts in collective order as the first thing that comes to my mind. Maybe we can expect changes in rules, policies, or structures, organizational structures. It could be in work, in community, in institutions. The second thing that comes to my mind is authorities being tested, maybe leaders, authority figures being evaluated based on fairness, consistency, and adherence to rules. And also maybe visibility and actions being judged by principle rather than personal preferences. And maybe we can expect issues and conflicts where systems or rules matter more than individual intent. And the next thing that comes to my mind is redefinitions of alliances and agreements, with especially Venus conjunct Pluto. Maybe relationship dynamics, partnerships, collaborations, and friendships may end, solidify, or restructure under necessity rather than sentiment. And also themes regarding loyalty, independence, idealism, attraction, obligation might come up, and agreements that are formed or broken may tend to be long-lasting during this period of time, rooted in practicality, because at the end of the day, it's Saturn and purpose rather than pleasure, let's say. The next thing that comes to my mind is a strategic communication or speech, because with Mercury in Aquarius, Cazimi, and also conjunction with Pluto, it can highlight clarity, finality, transformative communication, maybe official statements, announcements, or personal dialogues happen that reshape understanding rather than informing. And we can expect intense conversations, analysis, or bold truth-telling that sets new standards. And also the next thing that I have on my things to watch for is action that is motivated by principle. With supporting aspects that we have from Saturn and Uranus, action can be systematic and potentially revolutionary and calculated during this time. And work projects or initiatives or conflicts could be framed around ethics or that collective purpose or policies during this time. And also they can be less impulsive, let's say, or less emotional reactions. And also the next thing and the last thing that I want to talk about that we might notice during this time is the personal initiation, with Sun conjunct Pluto marking the culmination of this wave of initiation, maybe testing vitality, leadership, or personal power, a relationship to collective ideals. And Mercury and Mars in Aquarius may be emphasizing those independent thought and purposeful action aligned with systematic needs. Overall, together, this 4 days, there is like a shift away from personal preference toward maybe collective necessity, rules, and long-lasting consequences that outweigh those immediate desires. And there is this Plutonian initiation across thought, actions, relationships, and it challenges us to align with frameworks that outlast the individual. And maybe it's time for us during this time to embrace transformation that we cannot avoid, and we have to face it. So that's all I have for this period of time.
Yeah, another how many transits can we cram into the month of January? Oh my God. And it's so, the movements are so distinct and powerful, and so many of them happening in tight windows of time. When I see months like this, I know that it's going to be a very dynamic month where there's many distinct movements, which is always a fun way to start a new year. I feel like, in the new year, there's a lot of hope and enthusiasm for, even if it's just a calendar year, like a lot of us already start looking for things to be excited about. And certainly these encounters with Pluto can act as a catalyzing force. So anyway, let's move along. Courtney's going to take the last sequence of the month, which is from the 26th through the 29th, where we have another very, like, a grand finale at the end of the month. It's no joke. Courtney, you go ahead. I'll highlight whatever you want me to.
Yeah, luckily things actually slow down a little bit in terms of like unique dynamics, but the dynamics that occur in this last period of the month are really intense. And like looking at the month as a whole with all of this like squirrely action happening between Capricorn and Aquarius, it feels like a lot of groundwork is being laid for the moment in which Neptune ingresses into Aries, this time to stay. It's as if we're building and coalescing around some sort of long-ranging vision that's really starting to seize hold of our imaginations here. Neptune is a really tricky planet to track, though, and that's just one of Neptune's significations. Neptune is foggy. But I find it really helpful to remember that as an outer planet, Neptune is considered to be transpersonal, which means that it works on a greater scale than the individual level. We might think of Neptune as like a collective anima or a shared soul power that permeates through the shared space, like through the negative space of our communities, human and non-human alike. Neptune can be like that emotional contagion that just kind of seeps into a room and defies our normal modes of cause and effect thinking, because it's hard to track where that emotion is coming from. It's not necessarily connected to an event. But what it shows us is how we're ultimately linked together and how profound of an impact we have on each other just by being and relating in this shared space. And when Neptune engages with us on a personal level, it brings with it a mythic quality, which is why we associate Neptune with things like dreams, enchantments, delusions. These are all experiences that bind our bodies, our desire bodies, our emotions to the greater numinous pulsing and movement of the cosmos. The archetypal shift from Pisces to Aries is a really significant one too, because we're talking about this movement from this watery, ethereal place in which everything's kind of vague, but ultimately unified to this place where the individual necessarily has to stick their neck out for the sake of creative development. Aries is a very bold and impassioned place, but it's also a very vulnerable and a risky one. And then when you add to the fact that the day after Neptune ingresses into Aries, we have a Mars-Pluto conjunction, with Mars being the host of Neptune, we're looking at a really loud astrological moment. This conjunction between Mars and Pluto is loosely sextile to Neptune as well, which is just strengthening the connective tissue between whatever's happening with Mars and Pluto and Neptune's ingress into Aries. We've had this Mars-Pluto conjunction once before on February 13th of 2024. So if you're wondering how this transit might play out for you personally, you can look back to that moment and track it out in the place of Aquarius, like where it lands in your birth chart. Shahrazad did a really beautiful job unpacking these like personal planet dynamics with Pluto and Aquarius, so I won't beat that dead horse much more. I think we all know that Mars-Pluto together too is like especially intense. Pluto's intense on its own, but when you add Mars in the mix, Mars likes to incite the more volcanic qualities of Pluto. So we're really going to be feeling that. I just want to highlight how interesting it is that we've got the sun casting its rays over the Mars-Pluto conjunction. This conjunction is taking place under combustion. And the sun's interesting to me here because it's in exile in Aquarius. But if we're making that connection between the Mars-Pluto dynamic and Neptune's ingress into Aries, and we notice that the sun is the exaltation lord of Aries, we might be wondering how the sun's significations are somehow manipulating or playing like a secret role in the Mars-Pluto conjunction because it's in a difficult location, but ultimately has some sort of stake in what's happening with Neptune moving into Aries. We can move back to that Neptune Aries ingress. We'll tidy it up and put a bow on it before moving on to the last transit of the month. But one thing that's really striking about the Neptune-Aries combination is just how archetypally polar Neptune and Aries seem to be. And when we're thinking about combining two polar archetypes, we might consider the ways in which they temper each other, like spicy and sweet. It's really easy for us, a lot of us, to imagine the ways in which Aries might spice up the significations of Neptune, bringing action and courage and dynamism and aggression to Neptune's significations. But we might also think about the ways in which Neptune can soften the significations of Aries, bringing compassion, empathy, a greater consideration for the whole, and the spiritual concerns that underlie it. There's a really nice balancing effect between the two of them, even if it might be intense at times. I think a really potent question for this moment is, what does inspired and passionate action feel like when it's coming from a place of deeply embodied connectivity? And then we end the month on a harmonizing note as Mercury and Venus conjoin in Aquarius. And again, this conjunction is taking place under combustion. So whatever role that sun was playing there with Mars and Pluto, now it's flipped to the other side and is somehow has some sort of like puppet hands playing into the picture here. Thinking about Mercury's strategic and analytic and like procedural propensities combined with Venus and her relational qualities, her harmonizing qualities, and her eye for what brings pleasure to any situation, we might consider this moment as the forming of a peace treaty, perhaps, in the fallout of that Mars-Pluto dynamic. It could be some sort of strategic conversation, planning ahead for the future. How do we consider the collective and like smooth over whatever possible tensions have just erupted going forward into the future? But with the debilitating factor of the sun there, with the sun in exile and casting its rays over the conjunction, this moment may feel like a band-aid when what we really need is a tourniquet. And I would just like to remind us that the purpose of a first aid kit is not to serve as a final solution, but to sort of place a hold on the situation, to prevent further damage from being done, so that when we find ourselves in a place where we can receive better care, we're available to receive it. So all in all, I think that's a pretty hopeful note to end the month on.
I love that. Yeah, I think one thing I'll add here is I know that by the end of January, I will be finalizing things like the cover art for my new book, the formatting, the font, the style. I think it's interesting that I know because of the scheduling that I'm on with the team of editors and like style guide consultants that I'm using, that this will probably be the time in which those things are being finalized. Now, Aquarius is my 10th house of career. Venus, Mercury are also they're combust, but they're emerging as evening stars. And so one thing I would add is that things that you're agreeing to or developing or finalizing or even conceptualizing under, in a more private sphere will work their way into visibility in February. As the two planets emerge as evening stars. That's kind of exciting way of looking at that Venus-Mercury conjunction at the end of the month. But I've been thinking about that because I'm like, oh, yeah, because that will be a finalized style that doesn't see print for a couple of months, but they're in the process of solidifying something that has gone through an alchemy already, really, and is now in the process of forming something new that will become more visible in time. So I've been thinking about that one a lot as I've kept it. I've looked at because I thought, well, I wonder what's going to be happening late January when I'm finalizing this process with my book. Oh, that's neat,
Yeah.
So the other thing I would mention is I would have everyone just think about how much of this month, set aside the Neptune into Aries, but how much of this month moves from earth and water to air and fire. There's a distinctly masculine shift. Let's think of it more like yang instead of a gender word, but energetically, there's been a lot of water over the past couple of months. A lot of planets at the end of the year going through the trines and sextiles from Capricorn to Pisces to Taurus. And then you have this distinct movement into Aries and Aquarius. To me, one way of conceptualizing that would be like a gathering, a pooling together of resources, a lot of structural, practical changes. And then there's this shift of mood and tone where things get really conceptual and experimental and pioneering, and new pictures and plans are starting to emerge and develop really rapidly by the end like second half of the month. And that shift from Capricorn to Aquarius is interesting because it can suggest that long-term practices or projects are shifting gears somehow, or that they're gathering new data and new blueprints are being laid on the table. And so it's a really, really fascinating month. And February is only going to get more interesting when we get back together, because Neptune and Saturn will be conjoining for arguably the biggest transit of 2026, at least from the outer planetary perspective. So it'll be fun to get back together and break it down with you guys. But before we go, thank you guys so much. That was just fan. And I apologize. At some point, my program flashed off the screen and I didn't see it at first. Let's see here. Okay. I want to plug all of my hosts today so that you can find them in the new year. Okay. Now there's YouTube channels. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Let me get to Bianca. Bianca is Bianca Celine Astrology, at Bianca Celine Astrology on Instagram, and biancaceline.com, where you can book readings and see what she is up to. And then your YouTube channel, where you and a couple of other nightlighters are meeting is Faith
Yes.
Meets Fate. Is that right?
That's the one. Yes. And also we're on Substack, faithmeetsfate.com. So yeah, you'll find transcripts of our recordings there. So yeah, it's just like, again, just to reiterate, it's a channel, just the three of us. There's Ryan Hunt. He was on the reading clinic. And on the Nightlight, and then Mindy DeGraffenreid and myself will Nightlight students, and so we all have similar faith background in the Mormon faith, and we come together on this YouTube channel, and we share our experience in transitioning from faith or leaving behind an old identity, and we navigate this space with astrology as our guide. So come check us out.
Love it. Anytime people are exploring interfaith dialogues or coming out of a faith tradition with astrology, as a former, kind of Christian preacher's kid, that's so interesting to me. I'm so glad you guys are doing that.
Yeah.
I want to shift over to Courtney, who is at Dream the Wilderness on Instagram. So you can track her there. But I would also highly recommend her Substack, which is dreamthewilderness.substack.com, for some really substantive, deep writing and sharing. Anything that you want to promote, Courtney?
No, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Shirazad at New Moon Inner Healing. Do I have that right on Instagram?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we've got newmooninnerhealing.com for the website.
Yes.
And then we have YouTube, another YouTuber. I'm so excited you guys are building your platforms. New Moon Inner Healing on YouTube as well. Anything you want to share with us about what you're up to?
No, you can follow me on YouTube. That's where I share most of my content, because your hands are more open on YouTube, and you can book readings with me on my website as well.
Very cool. I love that. And then let me go down to Tim. Hold on. All right. So for Tim, we are linktree.com/Timothy Paulden. And then the Instagram is at Cosmic Blueprint. Is that right?
Yes, sir. And I do want to plug, shameless plug, starting in the new year, YouTube channel will be live. I've got some content, so I'm super excited to get that really rolling. But you can find that in the Linktree link, and next month I'll give you the YouTube channel. But
for real. I'm so happy. You guys, again, thank you so much for being here. And I want to reiterate to the audience that the intention behind our monthly horoscope section with co-hosts and this monthly overview with co-hosts is to give space for astrologers who are developing their skills, not only as readers, but these days, often in order to promote and distribute your work and get clients in, you have to advertise yourself through content creation. That's a pretty standard model of business these days. The point of this platform is so that Nightlight as a community is a space where people are not just receiving stuff from me all the time, but it's a space that can be a community development, like growth portal for astrologers. And so all of you, essentially holding space for that process on the channel is deeply appreciated, because everyone's finding their voice. Everyone's learning to do delineations. A unique challenge of breaking down 10 transits in 5 days is a growth experience that every astrologer needs. And first of all, you guys bring fantastic delineations. And I want to thank you all for being a part of the success of 2025. And I'm really excited for all of you to be part of the channel for the months ahead in 2026. But also thanks to the audience too for just being so supportive. There's been so many kind, wonderful, affirming comments for all of our co-hosts. And I think a real understanding of what we're trying to do here at Nightlight, which is build the success of lots of people and diverse faces and diverse voices from, a planetary perspective, so that astrology is also something like our vision is to make sure no one's priced out of astrology. And alongside of that is that astrology is represented diversely by different people, different experiences and walks of life. So we're just really I'm thankful for all of you, and I'm excited for a new year to work together.
Thank you, Adam. Can I share something very quick?
Yeah, of course.
On the support note, I also wanted to mention that as someone that speaks English as my second language, it was not easy for me to do this on YouTube and just in a public space. But my heart has been it has been so heartwarming to read all the nice comments. I just want to thank everyone for being so kind and supportive. It means a lot to me and to all of my friends here. So thank you for being so kind to us.
Yeah. Oh, this was great. Thank you guys. We will be back together again next month for the apocalypse with Neptune and Saturn getting together. We're all going to be like exploring the depths of that transit. That'll be fun. But anyway, you guys, Happy New Year, everyone. Have a great day. We will see you again next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.